I'm Judith MacLeod. I'm Programme Coordinator for Eco Congregation Scotland. My colleague Stephen Curran is the man who was just speaking to you. He's the manager with Eco Congregation Scotland. And we're absolutely delighted this evening to invite along Stephen Watt from the Young Christian Climate Network. And he's going to tell us all about this mega pilgrimage that they're making all the way from the G7, all the way up to COP in Glasgow. And they're hoping to arrive at the end of October. So I'm looking forward to hearing all about this, as I'm sure you all are this evening. So I'm just going to hand over to Stephen. And we'll have time for questions and answers at the end.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen at the moment? Have I managed to share?
Yes, see.
Nope, pressed the wrong thing. I'm used to PowerPoint, but we save everything in a Google Drive, and so I always press the wrong buttons. But first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I would just want to make one clarification. There was a tweet that went out by the Young Christian Climate Network that said I was Glaswegian. Any Glaswegians who saw that, as you can probably guess from my accent, I am not actually. I live in Glasgow. I'm based in the south side. I go to St. Margaret's Episcopal Church. But in the heart of the south side, but I actually come from Fraserburgh, in the northeast of Scotland. So I think I just felt that there need to be that clarification because, I didn't want to start this off on a bad foot. But anyway, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak about our pilgrimage to Glasgow. You might have already see we've been on the radio a couple of times. We've been on TV, but in BBC Southwest, so presumably you will have not seen us that unless, for whatever reason you watch BBC Spotlight, which is the Cornish equivalent of Reporting Scotland. So it's been very, very exciting and a little bit mad because at the end of the day, as you can see from the map in front of you on this slide, we are going a very, very long way. But just to say, I normally talk around these. I don't try and go through line by line, but I know people prefer sometimes having a bit of text for visual aids. So if there's a bit that I haven't mentioned on the slides and you want to ask afterwards, again, just throw your questions to me afterwards. But I guess you're asking, who am I? What am I involved in? What is YCCN, which is an acronym, and we love acronyms in the church quite often, but this SEC, the COS, COE, well, YCCN stands for the Young Christian Climate Network, and it's a bunch of young Christians aged between 18 and around 30 who really got in contact with each other over the pandemic year to essentially create an organisation that's for young people who are faithful Christians who are interested in climate justice. It's very much a product in one sense of the pandemic here because an awful lot of us are involved in different things, whether it's politics, charities, churches, and it really takes the stopping of everything caused by the pandemic to have us, get in contact with each other. Lots of people who knew groupings, and it's because of the miracle of the technology caused from this pandemic, we've been able to have an organisation set up which has members from Cornwall, to Scotland, all via Zoom. So yes, people know each other. People know each other in real life. We've even had a social now in Glasgow since Tier 3 is no longer a thing. But it's very much a product of that here, and we're all from different backgrounds. So you've got people from all sorts of, we're completely ecumenical. And you think of a church denomination, there's probably somebody who's from that involved with us, and it's really been a focus about how can we do climate justice with our faith as well. So it's been a very, very exciting, and because we're a new grouping, what we decided was that instead of maybe doing a few prayer meetings or lectures and that, we would try and do something around COP26. Now, Eco Congregation Scotland, I realise that you will know what COP26 is. I'm sure, I know there's a prayer meeting for COP. You're probably more informed than I am. But what it does mean is that we have this very unique opportunity that for once the world leaders, and it's not just the world leaders, it's the it's all the decision makers behind them, whether that's high ups of the civil servants, negotiators, whether that's from China, United States. There's a line we've been using internally that the world comes to Glasgow in November, and it really is the case. Whether that's faith leaders, whether that's the Pope, whether it's high-profile celebrities, there is going to be this incredible focus on the climate negotiations. Ones we probably will never, whether we'll ever see again. Hopefully, we'll never need to see again, because these will actually start a process of leading towards a sustainable solution to climate change. But it's a unique opportunity, and we're very aware that we're in the West, we're in the UK. We are one of the countries that has one of the most historic outputs of carbon emissions, being one of the first industrialized countries in the world. And yet, when it comes to disasters, when it comes to the after effects of climate change, quite often, or in most cases, it will be the countries in the developing South that will bear the financial and physical brunt of climate change. So one of our real key aims, and I'll go into that in a little bit, is to really make sure that those who put in the carbon actually pay their fair share, that it's not going to be a case that countries who are already suffering from it end up even more in debt because of having to mitigate against climate change. And there's a really horrible thing for us Christians in the fact that actually, because when it comes to things like debt, that goes through things like the City of London and Brussels and Wall Street. It means that actually, in many ways, our public services will end up being paid for off the back of debt caused by climate change, in other countries. So there's a real moral issue there, as well as ecological, as well as a focus on the wider planet. So it's a real opportunity in Glasgow. So we're a bit mad. Let's be honest. This opportunity in Glasgow, and again, what have we done? Have we decided to organise a small rally in George Square? No. What we've decided to do, and what's actually happening, I need to stop speaking like this is completely in the hypothetical, because people have been marching from along Cornwall the last couple of days, is we are going to hold a pilgrimage. Now, again, Eco Congregation Scotland does not need to have explanations on what a pilgrimage is or why it's important. But we really felt when we had the G7 in Cornwall, and then we had Glasgow as the focus of sort of world attention regarding climate, that we had this unique opportunity of being able to bridge both events and link up the churches along the way. So it wouldn't be just a case of a bunch of young Christians, but the idea that we'd be able to have churches across the UK getting energized, encouraged to think and talk about climate justice. And it's a pilgrimage, so there's as you can imagine, there's a lot of prayer, there's a lot of walking, and it's an old Christian tradition. From very early days, you went on a pilgrimage. Why? Well, you went there to go to a destination, whether that was a saint shrine or a point of importance. You also went there as a community, so you'd gather together. So it'd be the body all working together, not just a couple of lone individuals, but it would be a collective effort. And it would be a physical activity as well, because it's recognizing that Christianity isn't just a religion of spirit, but it's a religion which is rooted in our everyday life, and it's rooted in the material conditions that we live in as well. So it's a huge route. As you can see there, we're estimating it's about 1,200 miles. It may get longer because we have tributaries, which I'll get onto in a second, where groupings can link in with us, which just continues to increase the total. But it should be said, while we're mad, we're not that mad. We're not actually walking the whole way individually. I am speaking in the Shawlands. I am not actually in Cornwall at the moment. The idea is that each route is about 10 miles and that people can walk what they want. So it can be, and we've already had it, the churches are organising a few people to walk just the stretch near the church as it goes through. It can be, and we do have a few people who are wanting to walk large elements in that. There are going to be a few bike sections as well, none in Scotland, but those are really for areas which are quite not that populated really, and so it's much easier to have a few cyclists cycle them rather than trying to go incredibly windy ways through rural areas where there isn't that many people to walk along. And then we have residency hubs. Now what these are again, the relay is very long, but we are stopping ever so often at cities. So you can see on there Exeter, Bristol, Reading, London, Birmingham, Manchester, York, Newcastle, Edinburgh, Glasgow. I feel like there should be almost a rhyme there. These are where we're stopping. So we have got quite a few churches involved already in that. St George's Tron in Glasgow, I believe St John's Episcopal in Edinburgh, Newcastle Cathedral, York, I don't think it's York Cathedral, but most of the cathedrals in England, the Church of England has really, really caught on, which is, you know, a challenge for us in Scotland, because we don't really want to be showed up by the Church of England, or certainly I don't. But it's a time where there'll be services, there'll be moments of reflection, lots of different linking up with different organisations, and that's a few pictures from previous pilgrimages. I believe Eco Congregation Scotland was very involved with the pilgrimage to Paris. We've already linked up with a few people who were involved in that. So pilgrimage to Paris, and then that's Jubilee 2000. Again, Christians acting for justice in a real way. So you've probably guessed from what our message is, and if you've seen any of our social media or media presence at all, our real key line is actually rise to the moment, because we really do view this as a really important opportunity for the church in general and for us in Britain, because we won't have an opportunity like this, and that means normally when you have these giant climate conferences, we have to travel. That means it would cost money, it will cost resources, and we've got it in Glasgow, which is very easy for us to access in Scotland. It's also really easy to get to from anywhere that's got a part of the train network in the UK. So it's a real, you know, opportunity in that. So the other ones are ones that are occasionally used, but the one I would really hammer home is that this is a chance to rise to the moment. And I've said a lot of this. We're doing it because it's important, because I mean, Eco Congregation Scotland, again, who in the Scottish Church is going to know more about why we should be, you know, caring for the environment? Why should we be, you know, working towards climate justice than Eco Congregation Scotland? That's not really a question. If there are groupings or organisations that you actually think, answers at the back of a postcard. But we're doing this because it's a real opportunity to show our faith in action, to be passionate about climate justice, to raise awareness, to get the church involved as well. Yes, we'll be making statements to world leaders, but the idea is that we get the church involved as well. And I'm going to skip around them in that. I've changed the order, and I'm now changing it back on my slides. So what's our demands? Well, we've essentially got two audiences. We've got the UK government, because we live in the UK, and therefore we'll be represented at COP by the UK government. So you can read them there. They all revolve around climate finance and putting an element of justice and equality into how we view the finances of climate change, partly because we realise that finance is never the most exciting of conversations, and therefore it can often be dropped, you know, can be lower down priorities and that for other organisations as well, and that just because, you know, let's be honest, very few of us ever, get particularly excited when we're talking about financing arrangements. But it's really crucial how we design the next 10 years, essentially, with how climate change works out. Carbon credits could really mean the difference between whether the developing world can afford to have, you know, to mitigate climate change and continue developing, or whether it ends up back into these horrendous debt spirals, which ultimately lead to less mitigation and just greater human suffering. So that these are our demands, our calls, our suggestions to the UK government, but we're not just doing it for the UK government, we're doing it for churches as well. Now, I mentioned our residency hubs slightly earlier, and you'll notice there's a boat at the side there. That is our boat that is coming from Cornwall and it's going all the way to Glasgow. Now, it should be said, first of all, I fully realise that it looks like quite a small boat. It is not seaworthy. It is, if anyone tries to put it in the Clyde, it may or may not float. Who can know? What it is though is a symbol. And again, boats are quite cliche in climate circles. I realise that rising tide, the boat is, the earth is an arc. I think one of the reasons why we chose it, and it's not actually there, but is because we're actually going to the Clyde, because we're going to Glasgow. And Scotland, and the west of Scotland in particular, has such a tradition of, whether it's boat building, the early Christianization of Scotland, is via the boats of the Celtic saints. So there's a real passionate, there's a real image of hope, of industry, of the future in boat imagery in that. So this boat is people aren't walking with it. It's not going to be like some sort of Ark of the Covenant, as people have to carry it along the route in that. Instead, it gets transported from church to church and to the residency hubs in particular, where will sit for a while. You'll notice that on the sails there are patches, and these are patches that have come from communities that are already from around the world, that are already at the forefront of climate change. So it's taking our hopes, it's symbolizing our hopes, our goals, and also a little bit of the wider world as well. So that's the spiel. That's what we're doing, or that's what we've been planning. That's what we've been organising for quite a while. Now, you might be thinking this and going, "Wow, that sounds like a lot," and it is. It really is. It's a massive task. We've been very, very fortunate in that we've been, quite quickly, to be honest, churches and organisations caught on really quite quickly in that. So we have a full-time administrator paid for by a number of different church organisations and churches, which is fantastic, because the amount of admin I was having to do in my spare time has had to drop dramatically, because we're now at around 400 plus volunteers already. And that's predominantly in the south, because that's where the route is currently at. But if you're interested, there's so many ways that you can get involved. First of all, this is not just young people, it's young people organising it, but the idea is that the church gets involved, gets engaged, gets energised by this to really think about climate justice. So our walkers, as you'll see in a page or two, are all ages, and so people will be walking. So the day itself is round about roughly 10 miles. Normally we're trying our absolute best that these are roads which are routes that are accessible and that, so there will be no cliff scaling. I did have to veto, and it was the early days when somebody had suggested we go via Carlisle through Galloway, and somebody had suggested we go through the borders around the hills. Bearing in mind that we're going through Scotland in October, I really did feel that maybe hill climbing in October was not really the most accessible or sensible option. And so as one of the Scots on the team, I was like, maybe we go via somewhere that might be slightly drier. So we'll be going via the route. And for Scottish people, you'll notice, obviously, we are missing out large parts of Scotland. The route goes along the coastal path from Berwick upon Tweed, Edinburgh. We go along roughly the canal through Livingston, and then we take a detour through Motherwell, Uddingston, and up the Clyde to Glasgow. We've already in discussions, there's already a church in Stirling that is considering doing a tributary from Stirling to Glasgow. And a tributary is, so we're organising the massive route that you're seeing there. But we realise that there's lots of people that in different parts of the UK that might want to get involved. So, for example, you'll notice that there is a route in Wales. These tributaries are a bit more hands-off from us, that we're really trying to get. If churches are really keen, like, they could organise, because it's obviously such a big task for our resources already in that. But because we've got cycling and walking, I don't know where everyone's based, but if you were based in Dundee or Perth or any of the other parts of the, or even say Aberdeen, and you had a few people in your congregation or yourself that wanted to cycle for a couple of days and then meet with the route, while it was in Edinburgh or Livingston or Uddingston, then we'd be really keen to try and organise that as well, because obviously we really want the church across the UK as much as possible. I know there's talk about another route in Yorkshire, because there's churches on the coast of Yorkshire that are wanting to get involved but don't really want to bus people to Leeds. So which is great, because that's good for the environment as well. We don't really want people to be private jetting across the country to join a climate relay. So there's lots of things with walking, but it's not just walking. We have we need local people who know the routes and being able to look at maps and go, actually, you don't want to walk along there because that's full of potholes. We have people who are meet and greeters, so churches who literally at the end of a day, some people come out and clap the people as they walk into the town for the night. We need accommodation. We've already got lots of people volunteering, houses or church floors that lead walkers. That's the people who normally are walking more than one day can rest. We've obviously got admin elements in that if people really love spreadsheets. Believe it or not, I said that at a previous meeting, and we got somebody who said, actually, I really do love spreadsheets. And after seeing how much they've already done, they really do love spreadsheets. So there are those people, and if that's your skills and talents, absolutely. We wanted, and even if you just want to make sandwiches for us because you know that your church or house is on the route, and you fancy making a bacon butty or a cheese sandwich, that's also great. There's so many ways, and we already have churches and lots of the ways as well wanting to organise events and that. So really, this is something that we really hope the church in general can really embrace, really get involved. We're open, inclusive, ecumenical, and the idea is that if you want to get involved, you've got a passion, we'll try and somehow fit you in. We probably won't be able to organise a full route from Orkney to Glasgow, but we'll see how we can get you connected as well. Now, as you'll notice, the key dates have a date in the past, and this is really exciting. I've been doing these sort of talks now for quite a number of weeks, and this is the first time where I've actually been able to speak about a past event, because on the 13th of June we had our sending off service. The Bishop of Truro in Truro Cathedral held a special service for us at 2 p.m. Over 70 people attended, including the local MP. There were a number of journalists outside, so we are in a number of local newspapers there. BBC Radio 4 interviewed a couple of our walkers, as well as a number of more local radio stations. It's on YouTube. Happy to share if people want to see the service. I thought it was very, very inspiring. And I was watching it on my phone in a coffee shop. So really, really exciting. And then we arrive, and this is the bit where it really matters for anyone based in Scotland. We arrive in Scotland roughly the 15th of October. I say roughly because we leave Berwick-upon-Tweed, which is technically England, but very quickly do we march across the border. And then we're in Edinburgh for a couple of days, and then we arrive on the 30th of October in Glasgow. That's very, very fortunate because COP has just been announced today that it will actually start a day earlier on the 31st of October. So we don't know if that's because of us, that they just decided that they wanted this to knit in better. So we're starting the day, we arrive in Glasgow the day before, and then we will be based in St George's Tron for the next couple of weeks, being involved in a number of different events. I think we'll probably be running our own as well. So all very, very exciting. These are the dates. This is on our website. If you've got questions, I realise that you might actually want to be involved in stuff south of the border because you've got connections there, family, just links, or you're just going on holiday, and actually what you really want to do on your holiday is do a bit of a Christian pilgrimage for climate justice, which is what we've had quite a number of volunteers already suggest. So that's not me being flippant. We genuinely have people going, oh yeah, I live in Manchester, but I'm actually going to London for my holidays. I'll do a day in London as well. Brilliant. I love that sort of enthusiasm. And this is the exciting bit, to show that we are actually legit, that you have not just listened to me go on for half an hour about something that doesn't exist. On the right, you can see a clip from our Young Pilgrim service. That's the sending off service. The man in purple is Bishop Hugh Trevor of the Church of England. The middle photo, which I don't, depending on your size of screen, may be a little bit too small, was the sending off on the actual day, which was one of the Carbis Bay local churches. And then in Falmouth, which was the next stop on the route, the boat, which you can see, was there, and they held a service there as well. So it's really, really exciting. I'm in a mad WhatsApp group where we get pictures about what's happening in that, and they were just meeting the mayor of Truro today. So and getting interviewed for a local newspaper there. So it's really building up steam, and it's all very, very exciting. And I guess my pitch for Scotland is that obviously it's a long time before it gets to Glasgow. We've had such a hard year with the pandemic and that, and I fully realise that for lots of people, thinking towards October is still very, very hard when restrictions change, when rules regarding holidays and that. It might be hard to commit just now to something that still seems quite far away. I would say though that we've got the COP happening in Glasgow. By the time it reaches Scotland, it will have had 8 different church residencies, and presumably, if Cornwall's anything like this, thousands of volunteers. I would absolutely love it if the relay marches across the border north of Berwick, and suddenly the Scottish Church, puts the English Church to shame. That's completely nationalistic, so hopefully none of my English colleagues are listening in. But how wonderful, because we've got time, because we've got space to think about things and that, how wonderful if we could make the end point as good as what you're hopefully seeing from the pictures and my enthusiasm that the initial starting point was. We have such an opportunity in Scotland to really, really bring home the message of climate justice, to really make COP26 a moment that, whatever the world leaders decide, is one that changes how ordinary people in the UK think about climate change and about climate justice. And so I thank you so much for this opportunity to share about it. If you're interested more, happy to, I'm sure Judith will share my email address to anyone wanting it regarding climate change. And have a look on our website and that. And of course, question and answers, I believe, is next. So ask your most interesting or specific questions you have. The worst thing that can happen is I won't know the answer and I'll have to get back to you. But thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming along tonight. I wonder, do you want to stop sharing your screen just now, and then we can see everybody that's in the room and we can have some questions from people.
I will. Let me. Here we go. Why don't I say stop share? Would you believe I use Zoom in my actual real job as well?
Sometimes it's easier said than done to find what you need, though, isn't it? So lots happening, folks. Any questions?
Judith, it's maybe worth reading out what else Nicole had mentioned as an example. Elsa's had, unfortunately, to leave us tonight. But Elsa's in the borders. So they were really interested in what was happening. So she's left quite a bit of a message in the chat. But basically, Coldingham Priory is en route, and the Church of Scotland parishes are mostly around the coastal path, just north of Berwick-upon-Tweed, but the Church of Scotland parish in Berwick-upon-Tweed is actually included as well. So they're really keen to look at walking. She said happy to walk, happy to help with route, happy to host, happy to make or bake, etc. She mentions Berwick, Bournemouth, Eyemouth, Coldingham and St Abbs. So there's a really interesting example already, somebody that's really enthusiastic looking forward to this because they could see themselves on the route map there. So we'll definitely get back in touch with Els in relation to that.
I mean, I'm just very sad that they couldn't be here for me to answer this. This is exactly, we're actually walking the coastal path. Maybe slightly unwise in October in Scotland, but people will have to wrap up. The old joke is we're actually doing the relay the wrong way around. That, you know, we're starting off in Cornwall in the height of the summer and going to, you know, Glasgow in the height of the autumn. So realistically speaking, if it was the other way around, we might get nice weather the whole way. But no, that's really, you know, fantastic already to hear. Like that. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there are so many opportunities for people to get involved in. And if you're outside the Central Belt, again, the miracle of Zoom and, you know, the internet allows us to do things, you know, that once upon a time, even, you know, a couple of years ago would have been impossible without meeting in a committee room or a board room. So there's lots of things that can be done online, and there'll be online services and online meetings as well. And we can also, you know, try and work out ways of including other parts of Scotland as well. I mean, I come from the northeast of Scotland. I know the churches in Aberdeen very well. Absolutely would love to see, you know, I've got friends up there who'd be interested, but it's just getting that, you know, what the appetite actually is in Scotland.
Would there be opportunities for churches perhaps to host a Zoom meeting for their congregation to hear all about what's been happening on the pilgrimage, maybe interview some of your pilgrims?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the one thing I'd forgotten to say, and it's what I normally say at the end of any of these, is if what you thought I was saying actually sounded reasonable, and you thought actually my youth group in my church, or, you know, or just my church in general could actually, you know, they might benefit from it being on the notice, but actually if you could give a talk to them, there's myself, there's others involved in YCCN based in Scotland, more than happy to, you know, share, whether that's 5-10 minutes, half an hour, well, an hour, well, hopefully not an hour. That's a long time to hear me speak, but honestly, if you've got a youth group that might be interested and would spur them into action, me speaking to them, you know, and giving them a 10-minute Zoom thing before they start their Bible study, or all church meeting where before you discuss, you know, the finances. That is a very, very good question. So we don't actually, sorry, for the Edinburgh, the question is the route through Edinburgh. We don't, so our plans really, we don't do detailed route mapping until normally about a month before the route goes through that. And we do that partly because that gives time for volunteers, and partly because we really want to get local knowledge, and it takes time to get things like police approval and that. We're religious, so technically we don't know if we fall under the protest rules, but we make sure we're keeping them anyway in that. So there isn't specifics going through Edinburgh, but if you are more than interested, but we will be based in Edinburgh for a number of days anyway on the last weekend before. Let me just, if I just get my dates on here. One of the joys of screen sharing is that you can't have multiple documents on the screen at the same time, or everyone's reading it. But yeah, we are in Edinburgh from the 21st of October to the Saturday, 23rd of October. So if we will be, as far as I'm aware, in St. John's Episcopal Church, but if your church wanted to organise a meeting or anything like that, or meet and greet, or just come round and see the boat itself and that, absolutely get in touch, and we can see what we can do. The good thing is, by being stopping in the cities and that, it gives a chance for, it's not just the residency hub, the actual place where the boat is, it's the whole city can get involved in a way that means we don't have to maybe go through all the different suburbs while walking to cover all our areas and that.
There's a comment in here from Jen. Jen, do you want to unmute and...
Just to introduce Jen. Jen is our residency hub team leader for Glasgow. Yes, she's with us.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, as Stephen was saying, we don't know like the exact route into Edinburgh, but those are the stops either side. So if you draw a roughly straight line from Monkton Hall to the centre of Edinburgh, and then out again to Rathay, will be something like that, because we don't want to go too far out of the way, having been walking about 1,200 miles over the whole thing. We don't want to add too much to it. But yeah, that's the plan.
Sounds really good. Adrian.
Hi, absolutely brilliant. The way you're organised, the quality of the website, hugely impressive. Seem way ahead of many of the other pilgrim groups who are talking about coming to Glasgow at the same time. But I presume you are aware that there are quite a few others. And in particular, I'm thinking of the pilgrimage from Germany and Sweden, which is arriving by ferry into North Shields on, if I get this right, the 12th of October, and probably following a very similar route up the east coast, stopping off in Lindisfarne, then Edinburgh on to Glasgow. I wondered if you had any connection with them, whether there might be any overlap there. I hope you're not competing for space on the same night, for example.
Yeah, I'm embarrassingly there. I've got an email recently from them in my inbox, which has been on my to-do list the last day to go. We've been given their dates, and so there's a bit of a divergence once they leave Edinburgh, because they're essentially going very much just along the Forth Clyde Canal, and directly. While we've gone for a little bit more of a indirect route, which we're hoping covers slightly more populated areas, and so we can come into the city via the Clyde rather than via the sort of Springburn area and that. But yeah, we're looking to see how we can have if there is overlap, especially in the sort of first bit, or when we're in Edinburgh. We're really keen, like as I say, we're really trying to be as open and involved as well, and absolutely getting other people already making huge walks as well, if we can manage to get them to align. And if not, when we're in Glasgow as well, I think that the idea is to try and catch some of the disparate groupings that we hadn't managed to align on the way.
And while you're in Edinburgh, I think your arrival there will roughly coincides with a festival at Greyfriars Church.
Oh, okay.
Which is the Greyfriars 400th that was delayed because of lockdown. The Reverend Richard Fraser is a great pilgrim. He's written a book called Travels with a Stick about his pilgrim experiences in France. And they also have, of course, an excellent community centre at Grassmarket. So well worth making contact with them to see if they can be involved in some way.
No, that's really useful. I mean, that's one of the joys with these sort of meetings, and that is that we don't know everything. I mean, I know a little bit more about Scotland than when I was at a Diocese of Leeds meeting last week, and having only been in Leeds for a one-day work conference. The local knowledge about what was happening in that, was fantastic. So yeah, that's really useful. And to be honest, Adrian, if you have any other really interesting or facts like that, please, if you think of something after this meeting, please again try and contact us.
I'll just mention Scottish Pilgrim Routes Forum as well, which you may know about, run by Nick Cook, who are mainly about setting up routes, but of course they're very excited by all the different pilgrim activities taking place and have a network of contacts, big email distribution list, well worth knowing, and I can help with that later. Oh no,
that's brilliant. I've vaguely come in contact with them with previous things with the Episcopal Church, but hadn't thought that they might be interested in the sort of in that. So that's really useful as well. So thank you for that.
Karen.
Hi there. Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm the Children, Family and Youth Development Coordinator for the Presbytery of Glasgow. So I work with all churches in terms of their youth work. So it would be really great to connect in with you guys when you get into the presbytery as such, which is probably round about Uddingston, Rutherglen, Cambuslang area as you come along the Clyde. I held a youth meeting last week with young people and youth workers from right across the presbytery and beyond. In fact, there were some folks from Aberdeen there, and we were looking at ways in connecting in with COP. So once you get into Glasgow and kind of the central belt, it'd be really great to connect in with you guys, and obviously if you're having events, to share them round, because I obviously have connections in that sense, that it'd be really good just to connect in with you, and I'm quite happy to send you my email address so that we can do that.
Yeah, no, that would be brilliant. Really would be fantastic, because we know it's just finding those connections and that. And as I say, we really want sort of to spread the net as wide as possible, because climate change doesn't just affect one grouping or one age grouping. It affects everyone, and we want the Scottish churches as a corporate body, not just people who 27-year-olds or whatever.
Yeah, because in terms of our meeting last week, we had representation from the Boys Brigade and the Girls Brigade there as well. So right across, as soon as you come into the border, I'm sure we can get some folks round about to support and walk with you and support you throughout it. I know I've noticed Katrina Monroe's on the call as well, and she works for 121, so she works for the National Church, so she'll be able to kind of help and guide you through from the borders and connect you in with some churches along that way as well.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you for that's really useful.
Yeah, just to follow on from that, we're working with our partners at Christian Aid Scotland as well at the moment. And Stephen, I think you're on my to-do list to get in touch with this week, just to kind of see where we're at with it, because as I say, our partners in Christian Aid also have a good input into this project. So yeah, connecting everyone up, whether you're in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Orkney, the borders, wherever you are, doesn't matter. That'll be something that we're going to be looking at in the coming weeks now that the Veely's off and running, and we know a bit more about what we're up to. So yeah, I think just communication is key, keeping each other in the loop, and as I say, connecting everyone up so that we can get as many folk involved as possible.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much for that. The building behind me is a pub, which is also a church, but it's 250 miles away from you, so I suspect that you're not going to deviate in my direction. Right up at the top of your map, really. But the one I do note a connection. I was a curate with your present rector in St Margaret's, only I wasn't in St Margaret's, nor was he. We were in Largs at the time.
Wow, it's a small world, isn't it? Though it should be said, yeah, 250 miles is probably a little bit too far to, as much as we like being mad and ambitious, and going from Cornwall to Glasgow is a far bigger thing than going 250 miles to Glasgow. But it should be said that if you had a number of people wanted to be involved in an online meeting or there are ways and means of getting involved in that.
I'm sure we can do that. It's just a question of of getting something organised. But as you say, there's a month or two to get on top of it.
We will be having a sort of celebration event when we get to Glasgow on the Saturday, and we're encouraging as many churches as possible to make the Sunday a sort of climate Sunday as well. And I'm sure in this age of streaming and online meetings, we'll stream all of what's going on in Glasgow as well. So there'll be ways of connecting.
Splendid.
So, Adrian, sorry.
What's happening in Glasgow seems to develop day by day, but there are big plans by Interfaith Scotland or Interfaith Glasgow to have events on the Sunday, which is now, if I hear correctly, the first day of the COP. So, but they were planning big events, maybe involving George Square, maybe involving City Chambers reception, all kinds of things going on. So watch that space. And the Climate Fringe website is where all these things can be located. You can put your events on there and find out what else is happening on climatefringe.org.
Yeah, we've been in Interfaith. We've been in touch with Interfaith. They're having a big sort of prayer vigil in George Square. They're slightly worried they haven't got permission yet, which has been pending for quite a long time, which I think they're slightly anxious about, but they'll be fine.
In terms of your boat, are you encouraging congregations across the country to send you things to attach to your boat, or is it really only just people at stops?
Well, so it'll be at all the residencies, and actually we'll keep the boat in St George's Tron for the whole 2 weeks of COP, and we're going to try and make that interactive, so people who are passing by, anyone can come in, and like we'll make something arty so that people can contribute to it and write prayers and things and wishes and thoughts for COP. But along the way, there's actually a big launch that we're doing with Christian Aid, I think on the 8th of July, where they're encouraging people to make like origami paper boats and launch them and write prayers on them and things, and post that on social media and get involved in that way. So we're going to sort of use that to link in. The really cool thing about the boat, I can't remember if Stephen mentioned, is that the sales, all the materials are contributed by communities around the world that have been really impacted by climate change. But there's still plenty of space on there. So if there are communities in particular that are already suffering and feeling that effects, I'm sure we'd love to incorporate that and have that sent and all built into it. So yeah, there's definitely we want it to keep growing. The boat's not finished, it's set off, but there's definitely more to add to it.
So kind of an encouragement to our congregations to look to their partners in other parts of the world.
Yeah, we
ask them to send things for you.
Yeah.
But sorry, just to say is like linked with the Christian Aid event, but also just throughout the relay itself and that. I mean, there'll obviously be social media where people are to take pictures of their boats and that as well. But it's a very easy sort of interactive thing. If you don't want to necessarily send it to us, actually take as a children's activity or as a maybe even just a congregational thing, for something in between your hymns or whatever, something with boat related, fantastic, then you're sharing it in your church newsletter and that as well, but helps sort of reinforce the themes of hope of for the future.
Absolutely, sounds great. Rhiannon, you were about to ask a question, I think.
Yeah, so I had two things that I wanted to ask, and they're both a little bit specific. The first one is slightly selfish, and I might be able to show myself up. I'm a member at Bridge of Allen Parish Church in Stirling. You mentioned earlier that there's a Stirling church that is interested. So I wondered if, I had a wee quick look at the website, but I can't seem to see any info on that. If somebody would be able to let me know who that is, because we are in touch with a lot of the other churches, and I'd love to link up with them and see if we can get involved with that as well here, and because we're really close to our neighbours across the road and things. But the other thing actually also is that I am this year taking part in the Christian Aid Prophetic Activist scheme, and there are, I think, 5 of us from Scotland who are prophetic activists this year. all from sort of different areas. We've got somebody in Maybole in Ayrshire, I'm right in the central belt, a couple of people in Fife, and one up, I think, in Orkney. And I was just wondering about the possibility of some linking with the things that we're going to be doing with that. With regard to the walking, obviously for me being in Stirling, with that already being there, the possibility of maybe bringing a tributary and already being there is quite dominant. But I wondered about how it is that people can go about, you know, becoming involved and actually asking for that. What's the process for that?
Well, I mean, there's the first one is it's the Methodists in Stirling are the ones, and that's very recently that they've just gone contact us over the last couple of days and are now having discussions. I think they might want to cycle, which may not impact how if you want to be involved with that. But it should be said that Stirling to Glasgow, if churches in Stirling were wanting to organise a walk, again, we're with tributaries, we've got somebody whose job is to help advise with the tributaries, because we can't take full responsibility for them. For liability reasons, as well as the sort of manpower, but absolutely get in contact. So for the easiest way for getting in contact, I guess there's two ways. If you sign up via our website, that can get you involved both in the relay or in the Young Christian Climate Network directly as well. If you're really keen and you want to see how we can get involved with the Christian Aid so I can't remember the official title.
Yeah, prophetic activists. It's a bit of a, oh yeah. Yes,
prophetic activists. Wow, that was very close. If you want to get involved directly, I mean, Judith can give you if you've got an email address, and we can try and organise a sort of YCCN Scotland, Christian Aid Prophetic Activist Scotland Zoom meeting in the next week or two, if you want, because the sooner we can get in contact and we can see how we can work together on that, because we're really, again, the more the merrier. This is not a closed shop by any means.
Most foolproof way to make sure you're on mailing lists and you don't slip through the net, though, is on the website. There's just a sign up here button, and you can say I want to plan a tributary, or I just want to walk, or I just want a hymn, and like that is the best way to make sure you're on a list somewhere.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really good. I will speak to the other Scottish prophetic activists and see if we can organise something, and I'll get in touch. Thank you for that.
No, it sounds fantastic, and it's really we want to obviously get in touch with people who've never really thought about climate justice and really inspire, but we also need to get in contact with those who are already doing things. And Scotland's quite a big country geographically. We realise that we quite often are finding people who are one person in a church, and it's getting those people connected together as well. So, again, the good thing is we have time. The people in Cornwall it's been a mad rush of finding people, getting events, and the fact it's all seeming to pull off without a hitch is just by the grace of God, really. I don't know how they managed to do it, but we've got a bit more time in Scotland, so we've got that little bit of breathing space. So it's exciting, though it might mean we have to raise the bar a bit.
Sounds great. Stephen, I've popped your email address into the chat.
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. That's much easier than individual messaging.
That's the quick way to do it. So, any other questions or comments tonight, anybody? No?
I was just going to mention that we have a COP26 sort of update briefing newsletter that we produce, which is on our website, and there's also a kind of Adrian Shaw's led on this as our lead volunteer, if you like, for COP26, and also working with Interfaith Scotland and Glasgow churches together. So on that, it basically explains on one side of an A4 sheet what is COP26, and the other side what can you do to get involved. So I think it'd be really important for us to put a particular line on there about the YCCN and Rise to the Moment, to say that's something specifically people can take part in action, and just see what comes from that, because there's some fantastic ideas from obviously James up in the very north of Scotland, to else obviously we heard earlier in the borders, but different connections people have made in there tonight, obviously from Rhiannon as a new contact at Bridge of Allen. We already know that in the Stirling area churches are following the lead of Stirling Methodists and trying to get involved. So it'd be really exciting for us to find out a bit more about that. And just add it to our newsletter that we put out so that people automatically see that as a sort of call to action that they can take part in.
Rhiannon, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you if you could answer Liz's question, and it might as well answer it for all of us because it's good to hear what you do as well.
That saves me a bit of frantic typing and link finding. Starting. So the Prophetic Activist Scheme is a scheme run by Christian Aid. It's for young Christians aged 18 to 30. And the idea is that we all come together and we work together to both build the skills and to generate a campaign to create climate justice. There's a really heavy focus in what we're doing on being led by our faith and guided by both one another, but also by contacts that we have within the Christian Aid circle, within our own churches, and creating engagement with our communities. At the minute, our group is in the process of building up to what our campaign is going to focus on, what we're going to tackle. So there's lots of really great ideas, but it's young Christians across the UK. So there's people, again, it's like the YCCN route, all the way from, right at the bottom of England, all the way up to the very north of Scotland. Lots of people involved with it. And it's just a really good way to connect and also to be connected with other young Christians across the country who are interested in creating change and working towards climate justice.
Thank you. I think that's such an exciting thing as well. So, I mean, there's so much going on and so much happening in this run up to COP that it's almost hard to get your head around everything that's happening and all the things that are moving forward at great pace at the moment, it seems. It's just a very exciting time. I think we're all very lucky, really, to be in the midst of all of this and to be hearing these great messages from you folk. Stephen, can I just say a really big thank you to you and your colleagues for tonight. It's really wonderful to hear from you, and I hope we'll hear from you again before the year is out, and we can keep up with the messages about what's going on in your walk as people come across the country. And please do let us know if there's anything that churches can be doing, anything else. Give us a shout and we will put the message out there. We've got a whole lot of our own network meetings coming up over the next few weeks, so this is something I will be mentioning to everybody at these meetings. So hopefully you'll have some more people contacting you.
Phenomenal. Honestly, thank you so much for this opportunity as well. I mean, it's so nice to be able to share it in long form as well, just to have that opportunity to give a real hopefully not too in-depth picture of what we're doing in that. So it's, thank you again. It's been I've enjoyed the last hour.
Well, I think a big thank you to everybody for coming along tonight, and we will hopefully see you again before too long. We've got other events coming up in the next few weeks. It's worth having a look both on Eventbrite and on our own website. The events that we've got coming up are bookable through both places. Lots of different kinds of things, network meetings, there's training events, stuff about transport, looking at e-bikes and things. So lots to find out about. So hopefully we'll see you again soon, but thank you so much for coming along this evening. I think just a big round of applause to Stephen, our speaker for tonight. So.